First, congratulations on the 175th anniversary of the Mormon Trail. I'll be discussing the Platte County section of the trail itself. And my name is Jerry Kneifel. Okay, my objective today is to provide the information concerning the path. I feel like a student who's trying to teach the teachers, because you all are probably much more familiar with the trail than myself. But what I've done is research concerning how it went through Platte County. The canvas for my map is basically the survey of 1859. And it was then, of course, the Nebraska territory. And Platte County extended all the way to Dodge County. And so between Platte County and Dodge County right now is Colfax County. And so even though back in 1860, I'm going to take a snapshot of the trails at that time, because as many of the other speakers had mentioned, the trails were really very numerous through the different counties. And so the ones I'm going to be looking at will be two trails as far as the Mormon Trail is concerned. One would be the upper trail and the other one the lower trail. I'm going to describe a little bit of the history of the Platte River trails in general. I think most of this has been mentioned already, that it really started with the Indian trails along the Platte River, and the Indian trails basically were short duration where the Indians would go and do their hunting and fishing and etc. Then came the explorers, the traders and the trappers, then the Oregon Trail, then the Mormon Trail, you'll see the time frame on the right hand side, then the Gold Trail and Military Road. So the explorers, trappers, and traders basically started out with the Astorians, which were coming from the west heading to the east. There was a mention of Stephen Long expedition. Certainly he was involved in Platte County also. And then of course John Fremont as an explorer. The Oregon Trail is 1834 to 1860. Now there is some discussion, actually there's two different forks of the Oregon Trail. One of them coming from Missouri and then the other one coming from Council Bluffs. And the one I'll be talking about, which was on the north side of the Platte River, would have been the Oregon Trail that I'm discussing. I don't know if you've heard of Ezra Meeker, but Ezra Meeker was one of those that in the early 1900s actually revisited the trail and made it popular as far as one of the locations. And then of course the reason we're here today is because of the Mormon Trail. And you'll see the map here displaying the Mormon Trail as it goes through Fremont onto Columbus and Platte County. You can see on the county maps, the Dodge County, Colfax County, and Platte County. So as I mentioned, I'll be talking about both Platte County and Colfax County. The next trail would be the Gold Road. Of course, it was the 49ers, the gold rush to Colorado, the gold rush to California, and so it became very popular on the north side of the Platte River. And then finally the Military Road. In 1855, Congress appropriated funds for the construction of the Military Road from Omaha to Fort Kearney. And basically the Mormon Trail through Platte County is the same as the Military Road. Here are sections of the 1859 survey. It actually started in about 1857, and the right-hand side then would be Colfax County, the left-hand side would be Platte County as we know it today. Because I'm sure it won't project very well on the projection here, I put some maps over in the hallway over here, or right to the hallway, that have the details on that. You'll see the Mormon Trail actually would be the yellow line that is going through the different counties there. And then all of these gold colored sections there are different waypoints that I'm aware of that went through Platte County. The other thing that was mentioned earlier is the Huntsman Echo, which was a newspaper at Wood River Center. And this thing is online, by the way, for several issues of the Huntsman Echo. And there was advertisements. The sections that are available are the 1860 and 1861. There were advertisements from these different waypoints as you would go along the trail. And I copied some of the advertisements there that you'll see on there and associated them next to where those waypoints were. The other thing that's interesting about the Huntsman Echo is it also had a listing of the number of miles from one waypoint to another. And it goes all the way from Omaha all the way out to Salt Lake City. So it would be basically a guide where they would know how many miles to the next one. Now the other thing that should be noted is that although I have quite a few of the waypoints on here, there is many, many more than I don't have. And hopefully I'll be able to expand on this map as time goes by. Okay, this is the East Platte County in 1859, now Colfax County. And this would be the Platte County. On that one, I guess I went through it a little bit fast, but it shows a picture of the Columbus Ferry as it was pictured back then. It was really an etching of the ferry itself. That also is on the maps that I have displayed over there. The first stop in Platte County was at Buchanan in 1860. The town of Buchanan really wasn't established until 1856. Actually the same year as Columbus was established. But prior to that, it was called Shell Creek Station, and it was run by Nelson Tancred, who was one of the founders of the town of Buchanan. Town of Buchanan is actually 1 mile west of Rogers, Nebraska right now. It's no longer there, of course. It was platted out and everything as far as the town is concerned, but never developed. The next way station would have been 1 mile west of Shell Creek Station, and it was run by Alexander Albertson. Let's see, I think I did 2 there. Well, I can't get it to go backwards. No, okay, sorry about that. Must be a timing issue here. Okay, the next stop would have been the Bushnell Farm, and it was located about 8 miles west of the Buchanan House, or the Shell Creek. The ad in the Huntsman Echo says, "We are now prepared to entertain and accommodate immigrants and travelers." I'm not too sure what they meant by entertaining them, but that was what the ad said. Okay, a mile down the road then was the Russell Farm. Their advertisement states that their location is 13 miles east of Columbus on the Military Road, and the proprietor was Joseph Russell. The Reed Station was actually just right next to Skinner Station, and it was run by Joseph Reed as a proprietor. This next one, the Spalding Ranch, I couldn't find that on any other thing other than the fact that when I was a young man, an older lady had taken me out there and said she wanted some pictures of these 3 cottonwood trees, because these 3 cottonwood trees was where the Mormons used to camp. And she submitted it to the state of Nebraska Historical Society, the picture itself. And so we took that picture. Then, after we got interested in the Mormon Trail, Tom Bryan, who you'll hear from tomorrow, and myself decided we were going to find that location. Tom found the owner of the land right now, and so we went out there and did a little metal detecting and identified some of the trails in that area. So that was kind of a fun adventure. But it was 1.5 miles farther west than the previous station. Next was Peter Murray's. It was 5 miles upstream from the Spalding Ranch, and was a stopover at Murray's place. James Gelly Ranch was 1 mile from Murray's and is actually 2.5 miles east of Columbus. And there are still descendants of the Gelly family that live in Columbus today. In fact, one of them is a board member of the Platte County Historical Society. Okay, as I mentioned, the town of Columbus, established in 1856. Columbus had accommodations for travelers at the American Hotel, which was the first hotel in Columbus. And the other accommodations would have been actually at the ferry grounds, which is now in Pawnee Park in Columbus. The Mormon Trail came right down 7th Street in Columbus and then angled off into Pawnee Park. So the American Hotel probably wasn't the necessary destination as far as the Mormons were concerned, because of, what are you gonna do with all the cattle and oxen and the cattle and whatever. So most of it would have been at the ferry. So I had mentioned the ferry, so let's take a look at the ferry then as the etching is. It's really more remarkable to have a picture like this to give us an idea of what it really looked like. This actually is on the Mormon LDS website, this same picture. So it's nothing that we have in our archives. It's unique to Columbus, but it is the Columbus Ferry. We have several memorials or monuments in Columbus. This is a stone that was placed in Pawnee Park at the location of the Luke Fork Ferry in 1939 by the Daughters of the American Revolution. Okay, in Columbus then, the trails actually split, and we would have the upper trail and the lower trail. The original Mormon of Brigham Young would have been following the upper trail route past the present location of Columbus and traveled up the north bank of the Loop Fork. At some point, the Loop Ferry was established in Columbus. Basically, the founders of Columbus established a ferry in 1856, but some of the research I've done indicates that there was a ferry previous to that across at Columbus. I've never been able to pin that down at this point, but I know that when the Mormons had went through Platte County, they had established some of these ranches and farms, as they're called, and people would actually stay there to help the immigrants. My suspicion is that that ferry that was at that Columbus area was actually one of these, that the Mormons had a person that was at that site. But as far as the first one that was, I'm going to call it licensed, would have been the one that in 1856. Cleveland, Nebraska. Columbus, Nebraska, Cleveland, Nebraska. Yes, they were both from Ohio. Cleveland basically was a small rival town that was only 3 miles to the northwest of Columbus. The gentleman by the name of George Francis Train is the one that actually bought the Cleveland House Hotel and moved it 3 miles to Columbus and basically collapsed the town of Cleveland. The town never really fully developed, therefore, and in a random 1860 date that I've picked for my presentation, basically the ferry would have been in operation there. So there was actually 2 ferries, one in Columbus, one in Cleveland. The Huntsman Echo, again, which I refer to several times here already, is one of them that has an advertisement for the Columbus ferry and the Cleveland ferry. The Cleveland ferry was operated by Frank and James North. For you historians, the Frank North is the same Frank North that was the leader of the Pawnee Scouts. The Pawnee Scouts were the ones that protected the immigrants and the railroad workers in 1866 as they went through from the hostile Indians, primarily the Sioux. James North was a businessman in Columbus and was very prominent in the Columbus area. As far as the upper route is concerned, this is the last location that I'm aware of that was on the upper route, and it was located about 7 miles west of Cleveland. The 3 miles to the west of there would have been the Monroe Post Office. Now there is a town of Monroe, and it actually is a couple miles away from what the Monroe Post Office was at that time. Of course, that upper trail then went through Genoa and the Pawnee Indian Village, so that would have been one of the next locations. Going back to Columbus then, before the split of the trails at that point, was the Barnum Ranch. The Barnum Ranch was located on the north side of the Platte, but the south side of the Fork. So in other words, the first place you would see after you got across the Loop River by way of the ferry would have been Barnum Ranch. The advertisement that is in the Huntsman Echo says that it was on Crystal Creek. So in doing this little research, I found out that what we now call Barnum Creek is actually Crystal Creek. So Barnum Ranch, Barnum Creek. And the last place found on the maps is Prairie Creek Station, which was about 11 miles west of Barnum Ranch. You hear a lot of these same discussions about the different names of places. One of them, of course, Wood River, was very prominent. I think they had a Johnson's Ranch at that location. There's actually a lot of other stops, as I had mentioned, and if anyone is aware of any of them that would have been in Platte County, I'd certainly like to know about them, because as I mentioned earlier, there's more to it than what I'm aware of. I'll show you a couple of memorials to the Mormon Trail that we have located in Platte County, specifically Columbus. The first and most prominent one is a statue that we have in Pawnee Park. It's the size of the Mormon that is standing on the pillar here, I'm going to say is 9 or 10 foot tall. It's very prominent. It's located at what we call the Bell Tower in Columbus now, right at the entrance of Pawnee Park. It says on the stone below that, this is the North branch of the Oregon Trail, gratefully dedicated to the early pioneers by Platte County Chapter, Daughters of the American Revolution, and it was placed at that location in 1927. The other one is the Mormon Pioneer Trails Association. We have a plaque that is in Pawnee Park again, very close to where the ferry was, the road to Zion. The end of the trails through Nebraska territory, basically, was because of the railroad, the Transcontinental Railroad, which came through Columbus in 1866 and was completed in 1869. So this is the thing that had, it was much more convenient, and this shows the linking of the two railroads. The trail's impact on Columbus. The trails through Columbus had a significant economic impact, because when Columbus was laid out, basically the town of the, I'm going to call the business district, was actually about 3 or 4 blocks to the north of what the Mormon Trail was on 7th Street, as I mentioned. But the fact that everyone wanted to be on the trails road, this is where really most of the downtown in that era location was, on 7th Street. So the actually platted portion of the business part didn't really develop until later on. And then it developed after 1869. However, by that time, the railroad had come through, and so everyone, all the businesses, wanted to move up right next to the railroad with their hotels and etc. So that then was up on 11th Street in Columbus. It moved up to 13th Street, and now that we have the Miracle Mile out on the highway, the old Lincoln Highway, most of the businesses are out that location, but the downtown section is trying to survive. So I thank you very much for your kind attention, and if you're passing through Columbus, we invite you to visit our museum to learn more about our local history and more about our trails.